Great. Thank you, everybody, for being here again. Um, so we'll bring up the outline. What I'd like to do today, number one, thank you for Wednesday. There was a lot of editing, a lot of good feedback. This is really valuable for us. Um, as you recall on Wednesday, I think we were up to page 40 out of 131 or something like that. So a lot to get through. What I wanted to start with today is move ahead a little bit in the outline to the part that I think might require perhaps more conversation, but also to get you thinking on more feedback you may want to provide next in the rulemaking process. So give you some time to think about that and kind of explain, I think, where we might start with something, give something a value, on January 1st, but it could still be an evolution. And that's the proficiency exam component of the bill. I think that's the part of the bill that's probably caused the most conversation for us internally on how will that look, knowing what your objectives, I think, are with that language, but also knowing what our current parameters are and what our current system is, right? Like what we have currently in place. So I can see this evolving in a good way. Number one, I think it's a great concept. It's a matter of like, how do you make it work? So Michelle, do you want to bring up that part of the outline? And then I'll start talking while she's doing that. So in our current practices and in our current statute and rules, we deliver education in one of three ways. We have PSI, who does the pre-licensing and reactivation exam. So that's the outside company that we contract with. That's what they handle. Then the other way we deliver education in Oregon is through continuing education providers that are, approved by the agency and have criteria. Just like I should say, normal CE providers have to meet a set of criteria to be permitted. And then if they don't meet all those requirements, they can go to the board for an exemption or exception, and the board can approve them as a CE provider. That's the bulk of our CE providers in the state, right? I mean, you all know that. Then the third component, which is a much smaller subset, is the CE providers that deliver advanced practices for, brokers, principal brokers, and property managers. And that's the whole advanced practice requirement. So as we're trying to figure out what do we do with this part of the bill that provides the value you want from it, like where do you want to go with this language? I think we have two things to look at here. Number one, the three types of lanes we have for education. We're looking at fulfilling this language with the advanced practices course at this point. Because really the bill said solely that the proficiency exam must be in a manner approved by the real estate agency. So the manner we're seeing would be these advanced practice providers, because that's the three lanes. We could have explored the PSI route because I mean they're qualified CE provider. I'm sorry, qualified educators. They have systems in place. And maybe you'll ultimately land there at some point, but for today, they would require us to establish a work group with them to develop a new exam that would then be all established, in the future, just like they have the pre-licensing exam and the reactivation exam. The issue with that is there'd be some development costs potentially, but there would definitely be an exam fee. Well, we've never talked about in this process when the bill was introduced or for us about instituting a new exam fee for our licensees. So that we kind of took off the table and landed on advanced practices.
County Pagano.
Okay. Oh, is that somebody else chiming in? Okay. So that's how we interpret this to like for the manner approved by for January 1st. The one thing I would need some help with from the group is we've talked, I've talked with Jeremy and I've talked to Corey and others in the group about what are you looking to deliver here? What are you really looking to accomplish? Well, that part still hasn't been established fully materialized. And actually, that's outside the scope of the bill. So, but we want to do something meaningful, right? I've talked to Jeremy multiple times, like, what do you want to deliver with this? And it'd be nice if this work group does more than simply insert into rule that this will be housed under advanced practices. That doesn't really give any direction to the advanced practice teachers. Like, what are you going to teach on? You know, so I think that's what I think requires some discussion is like, number one, I think it's the only placeholder we have as of today to deliver. So like I've landed on that, like it's the only avenue I have practically. But what should we do with this, like to give some guidance to that group of parameters? So I've got on the screen here what's currently in advanced practices. And again, this is for broker. There's a section for broker, principal broker, and property manager. And that's one thing that this group hasn't talked about at all is teach the property managers. We don't really have a big group of property managers in this work group either. So that's my my prefatory comments to this is like, what would you like to do to provide guidance on day one for January 1st on what this looks like? So we can go to the advanced practice providers on, you got to teach on this. So we can shift the hours around as long as we can shift the hours around as much as we want. To say 9 hours of business ethics that we currently have, that's pretty generous and it's probably kind of ambiguous and even hard to get to 9 hours. So let's talk about that. I want to open this up for discussion on what things you think should be taught and where do they go in each of these licensing categories. So I'm opening that up for discussion. Number one, does this analysis make sense from the agency standpoint for day one? Because it's what I have to work with. But then also, what do you want in there other than just this simple language right now? So floor is open.
So I know Rita and I talked about this a lot last year, and we just talked about how new brokers specifically out of the gate, we don't feel like has a lot of in the trenches training. It's real
Mhm.
just basically memorizing and passing the exam.
Yeah.
So I know when I talked to you before, Steve, one of the things that I thought was an opportunity is that you have so many um, case studies basically in your repertoire of issues that have come up with ORIA on a consistent basis.
Uh-huh.
So I think where the challenge is that I think we have a lot of meat there for training and putting people in situations. The hard piece that to figure out is how to put that into test form.
Okay.
And thank you, Deborah, for popping on because I know you've got a lot of experience with curriculum writing and things like that. And I know, Rita, you probably have some to add to that because you and I talked about this a lot last year. That was kind of our concept is trying to add to the original training or their first year in the trenches
Mhm.
on situational type training and contract.
So case studies and maybe we could be offer some clarity on case studies and each sanction type, for example, like reprimand, suspension, revocation, like some things like that, Corey, like
Yeah,
getting,
yeah. And
yeah,
and just
okay,
like here's what happens out there and
uh-huh,
here's what happened, what the response was from the Oregon Real Estate Agency and here's what should have happened. What would you do in
okay.
that situation?
I like that. It's funny, that message that just popped up from Michelle is actually, we're teaching a course at the August board meeting in Pendleton. And what I'm working on is I have 8 case studies that I'm teaching on for this group. And I'm intentionally choosing different topics that come up and a different result. Like one was from a settlement conference, one was from a hearing, one was from a court of appeals. Okay, that's good direction. Thank you.
Commissioner, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's sort of two ways to think about it, and they're both important. One is protecting the consumer,
Mhm.
uh, and things like um, honesty and disclosure and things, right? But then the other is like being an effective advocate for the consumer, like being actually a good real estate licensee in terms of accomplishing the client's objectives. And so I'm
Yeah.
wondering, is there in your because the three topics, as I was thinking, like what's missing from this list of topics,
Yeah.
the three things I that I came up with were negotiations,
Okay.
effective communication with clients and cooperating brokers, and practical use of real estate contracts. And I'm wondering, in those disciplinary case studies, are there are there the more practical components that come up? For example, we all know there's a lot of agents getting a hit for not disclosing or things like that, but are there also agents getting in trouble because they acted below the standard of care, because their communication was below the standard of care, because
Yeah.
their advocacy for their client was below the standard of care, or other examples that can get at that more functional component using those case studies?
Yeah, those are three good examples. And I can actually think of three cases that probably do apply there. One would be an example of there was a disclosed limit agent and he was advocating on behalf of one over the other, and it should have been neutral. Effective communication where they kind of ghost their customer and they don't follow through as, or they fail to in negotiations, fail to advise their client on what happens if they don't get a seller property disclosure statement, what their rights are. So yeah, I think I like um, clarifying, like, if you use case studies, they have to include these concepts. Yeah. And they don't have to go back, like for the class I'm teaching, I'll go back a couple of years to make it more contemporary, but they can go back as far as they want to, you know?
What would be I've been thinking about in the case study, what would, in terms, and to Corey's point, figuring out how to translate it into something that can be tested,
Tested, yeah.
would it be sort of like, I think it's worth us all discussing what that might look like. Like, so it'd be like, maybe like, what should the agent have done here instead, would be the questions that are asked, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm liking where this conversation is going because when I teach on this, I'll describe what happened.
Uh,
So that would be your what was it, like a math problem, right? Like this is the problem. This is the complaint that came in. This is what was uncovered in the investigation. And then we have the list of 13 or 15 whatever violations we have. It's like the agents, which of these applied for a potential violation and what potential statutes were violated in 696-301, or which potential uh, violations were found under duties as a seller's agent or duties as a buyer's agent. That could be the exam part, maybe?
Do you think it could go I think that's great.
Mhm.
I think the one additional step beyond that, if there's a way to test it, and that's what I'm wondering is, do you think that the test providers or the course providers would have a way of evaluate, like asking what should have the agent done here instead?
Yeah,
Or is it,
yeah.
yeah.
It
I mean,
it would
not
be
yeah. I mean, now
interesting.
we're actually getting into like building the actual class, right? And I know, you know,
But it,
but it's good to do this, like to conceptualize how do you make this work.
Do we have a relationship with anyone from a test provider that might be willing to kind of chime in on this with us and from their perspective on what that would look like for them in order to accommodate that?
yeah, because I was gonna say, is this gonna be like, is it a test written, like they're doing it on a computer, or are they doing it like handwritten, or like what does the test look like? Is it like multiple choice?
Michelle,
Because
Michelle, do you know how the advanced practices course is administered now?
I'm sorry, how many what?
Yeah. Do you know how the advanced practices courses are administered now? They just
Almost,
retain copies of the exam, right?
do they retain with copies of the exam?
Right. For advanced practices
I think all of them are online courses and
online. Okay.
it's multiple choice exams.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
that's what I figured. So
But they're administered by the school, not by PSI or any
Right.
formal.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
In terms of working with them, this is where this rulemaking group can provide direction on. These are the topics we need to teach on. Um, there's such a small population, and Jeremy, you probably saw that too, right, online. There's such a small group that that's part of the challenge is like, who's going to teach all this?
Can I speak practically
Yeah, Deborah.
as an instructor, as a course writer, and as a managing principal broker? And again, Jeremy, you'll have to chime in here because I'm not sure what the legality would be between the Oregon Realtors and the Oregon Real Estate Agency. But why couldn't we just say that for your first broker renewal, you're required to do the GRI? Because it does everything we're talking about right now.
So that forces an entire population of licensees to join the trade association. I
Okay,
don't think
then
that's
why
gonna
can't
fly.
we sublet or sublease the GRI program and require it somehow? And the other thing would be the Principal Broker Academy, taking just, seeing what we can borrow, I guess, from the Oregon Realtors, because we've already done all this work. Everything you're talking about is done.
Right.
And it's compartmentalized. So how do we, without requiring membership, how do we work a partnership without membership? I guess would be my thought
Yeah,
process.
I see. I did expect that to come up, and I was trying to conceptualize how that works. Well, number one, you only have 2 of the 3 licensing types handled. Property managers have totally ignored in that process, and so, and we also have to. We, as the regulator, at least need to qualify who the instructors are. So, you
Well, with all due respect, it's the instructor pool is qualified by the CE provider. They're the
oh,
ones
that's
who,
good. Yeah.
yeah, they're the ones, that approve the course content and the CE, who's going to teach it and where and how it's delivered. And maybe we need to take a deeper look at that. But
Yeah.
to say that it has to meet these standards are, and please don't take this as a criticism, but our standards for that now are pretty low, with all due respect.
No, I think that's why this
That's
conversation
why
even
we're here.
exists. Because,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but I mean, there has to be a process whereby the regulator or the agency is regulating the process. Otherwise, if we outsource it entirely, well, then this could have just been membership requirements for your own trade association, right? Like,
I'm not talking about
yeah,
outsourcing it. I'm talking
wow.
about the real estate agency having the ability to use that content um, without requiring membership of the trade association.
Right. So then you'd have to make that content available to everyone because not everyone.
Right, that's what
Sure.
I'm saying, without
Yeah.
membership. So,
Yeah.
and how do you do that? I don't know, Jeremy. I
Mhm.
know we're rewriting and updating
Yeah.
the Broker
Yeah.
Academy right now.
I mean, I think there's 2 ways to think about it. I mean, one is that way, like how do we provide the content to the agency? The other way is
Because we are an approved provider.
not for advanced practices though. So should Oregon Realtors just get certified as a provider for the advanced practices in the new proficiency
And be one of many.
and be one of many, but sort of if we have the best product, then presumably over time,
And the
people
most
will.
members. I mean, you have most of the licensees as members too.
Um, and I know
So,
Jenny's interested. We talked about that. I mean, we're interested in playing a role here and helping
yeah.
to create content and help licensees do this proficiency thing. Um, I just think given the timeline we have for these rules, that it's, as the commissioner was mentioning, we may have to do this in phases where we come up with something for now that just sets the general criteria of what we're looking for at a pretty basic level, but then we revisit this, and over time this proficiency component becomes more detailed and more meaningful. But given the short time frame and the
Yeah.
need to let other providers prepare courses, we may have to do a two-step here.
Yeah,
And
I see that.
for
And then also
clarification, Steve.
keep in mind though too, if we have 3 licensing categories and property managers are not even part of that, and we have to have the same process for all 3, right? Like, okay, this is how we're administering this across the board. Kelly, go ahead. You've had your hand raised for a while.
Sure. Thank you. I was just going to take a step back and look at it just from a different kind of perspective. So when this came up, there's a competency issue, which in my opinion stems from principal brokers not doing their job training in the first place. So this test is basically just saying, did you learn what you were supposed to learn, right, from your training managing broker? So, we could step back and visualize what is it that principal brokers should be teaching these new licensees. And then this test would just test that they understand, like they got the training that they should have had. Because I think that's the issue. There's companies that have a training program, their agents know what they're doing, they're supervised. Really, what brought this about is that there are also companies that sign people and that's the last time they see them and they're kind of on their own. And so we're worried about competency because they were never properly trained. They're missing, concepts in big areas. So just throwing that
So,
out there, maybe
yeah, so
that.
the challenge I have with implementing this is the bill instructs me to put this somewhere in a manner approved by the agency. And we're still at the point we're trying to figure out what are even the learning objectives. And
Mhm.
so my conundrum is I have a bill to implement by January 1st, and we don't even know what our learning objectives are, you know? And how do we give guidance to whomever is going to teach this all in that short period of time, like, so I think what we have to get to now is number one, agreeing on where it's going to be housed, which I think our only path right now where it can be housed is this one.
I agree. Advanced
And then
practice.
also, what do we give this population of providers direction on? Because the purpose of the rulemaking group, according to the law or the new bill, isn't developing the course.
Right.
So I want to give them something to work with. And given we have A through F on the screen here, what else can we give them? Give them an A through N, A through Z, or whatever it would be. Um, and maybe that might require, like for today's purposes, do you want to think about that some more and give us a few more talking points and get that to us by a certain day or next week or whatever? And figure out what these 26 hours now look like. But that's about the extent of what we can do
So
with this rulemaking group because we're not the teachers and we're not going to refabricate the entire process in the next, X number of
I
days.
think you can add in there like negotiations, like Jeremy said, you can add in there like practical use of contracts. You can add in their communication. I mean, that's
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
GHI, I mean, add those things in there. And then if it's not up to us to figure out the curriculum, it's up to the schools, then
Yeah.
let's do that.
And then from that, make this the best course possible, right? Like just that is kind of the free market approach. The realtors have the largest portion of licensees as their members. So presumably, if you put together the best course, that's where they're gonna go. And if they don't come to you initially because there's no course, please work with, and we can do the same thing. We can work with those CE providers to say, look, this is what we need in the exam. It's such a small population. We're talking like less than a half a dozen providers. So let's give them direction for January 1st. And this is what we need to teach on.
Mhm.
But for now, all we can really do is agree on where it's going to be housed and some topics to include. Yeah, yeah. Corey, go ahead.
I was just going to comment on Kelly's comment. I know that we've talked in length about principal brokers not stepping up and helping guide the new brokers, but I think, after all this conversation, and I know again, Rita and I have talked a ton about it, and Angie and I do moving forward, that the challenge is that we have to have some sort of a base curriculum. When you have principal brokers all over the state creating their own curriculums, not everybody's getting kind of guided or taught all the same content. And so I think that's why we've gone down this path, is making sure that we create a base curriculum, however we do it and however it's delivered. And then it's a requirement. It's a forced situation now versus a principal broker that does do it and a principal broker that doesn't do it. So
Yeah.
just a
Totally.
little history on that.
See Deborah's hand. Anybody else's hand too for, okay, Deborah, go ahead.
Just a quick clarification. For the advanced practices, both for brokers and principal brokers, those courses do not require approval through the Department of Education. So like a pre-license course has to go through a school that's approved by the Board of Education,
Mhm.
whereas this continuing education does not. So advanced practices fall under continuing education,
Mhm.
not the Board of Education. That has to be through like the pre-licensing, which requires the PSI exam. So
Mhm.
if you put the category of advanced practices just under the category of continuing education, that makes it a lot easier to provide course content, course objectives, delivery methods. That can be done fairly quickly. I'm not saying we do it now,
Mhm.
but keeping in mind, you don't have to meet the same requirements of a pre-license course because the advanced practices fall under continuing education. So moving forward to make that distinction, I think is important as we put that course content together moving
So
forward.
are you thinking, Deborah, that's a good place to keep it then because it's more mobile?
Absolutely, because
Okay, good.
that gives us the quick ability to turn when something's happening, like,
Thank you.
even like in implementing case studies that are on litigation that's going on right now, keeping it as current as possible. Because if you keep it under education, like pre-licensing, if you change an I to a T, you got to go back and get their approval.
And go
And
back to
that can
PSI
take,
and change the exam and everything
and then
too.
PSI has to change the exam.
I
So if
don't
you
think
look at what some of the companies are already doing, like online ed, we should just partner with them and say, this is what we want the content to be. Because
Right.
they've already got it, that's already out there.
I'm
So
glad you said
why
that because,
overcomplicate it, huh?
we didn't want to go to the PSI route because it is more inflexible and takes more time and everything. So
And they're
I'm glad.
facing their issues now.
Well,
Through Arella, we learn a lot. PSI is, they're being challenged by their volume of work. Why would we put ourselves in the back of the line
yeah.
with PSI or the other company that provides the testing? I
Plus
think we just leave it as a continuing education required by the state,
Mhm.
and then we can be, as an instructor, you can be a little more flexible in what you teach because you
Good,
could be as current as possible.
I think
good.
we're all on the same page of leaving
Yeah,
it under advanced
yeah,
practices.
Okay, I
we've got consensus
misunderstood then. I
there.
thought you were talking about moving it to PSI,
No,
which,
no, 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 no.
and they only do testing for approved schools.
No, that was when I was setting up the
Okay,
conversation. I was saying these are our three paths that we offer. We did not explore PSI for a number of reasons, and you
right.
just gave us another reason why we wouldn't do it. So, actually, does help solidify where,
Yeah, let's keep
hear
it
me.
under CE for sure because
Yeah,
that gives us that.
plus it is post licensing anyway. So,
Right, it's
Jeremy,
post-licensing and required as a
Jeremy, go ahead.
license requirement, not an education requirement.
Yeah, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Deborah. I think that no, I think it's a really good point. And I guess to sort of explore what you just said a little bit more, I think that's the what I'm trying to figure out is exactly how nimble and quickly can they react. For example, and I can read through sort of a draft I put together here, but
Mhm.
I think, one issue is adding topics and rejiggering the number of hours. That's not a big deal. That, of course, they can do. The question then is, in their ability to use different methods of testing. Um, like do they have the ability to do things other than a simple multiple choice type exam or not? Because I think that's going to dictate what we are able to pull off by January 1st. I mean, because I have some ideas about what we would say in the rule, but I don't know for sure if those things could be done through multiple choice, and then I don't know if these testing and course providers have the ability to do things other than multiple choice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the online, it's automated, so it can't be open-ended. It has to have some component that the computer can just say yes or no. So there's not someone actually looking.
Yeah.
That's why I like
Um,
that case scenario where it's like, what should they have done? This, whatever. So
yeah,
at least it's,
So you still present them the options. You
yeah.
don't.
yeah. I mean, it won't be free flowing answers, and under their current environment. You know,
So how would we pull that off? And maybe I'll just read what I wrote just because it might help to like,
yeah, yeah,
and I use the word hypothetical scenarios, but we could easily replace that with case studies from that have actually happened. But so first I added in negotiations, effective communication with client and cooperating broker, and real estate contracts to the list of topics. And then after it just says that you need to do an exam and score 75%, it says the examination described in section 4 must include a practical skills assessment that presents one or more hypothetical scenarios involving real estate transactions and requires the real estate broker to demonstrate A, the ability to spot issues that present risks for the client, B, the ability to translate the client's objectives into a real estate contract, and C, appropriate communication protocols between the client and cooperating brokers. Now, it's not perfect or right even necessarily, but just thinking through if that's the type of things we're talking about, are those the type of things that could be done through a multiple choice? And the one in particular I'm thinking about is the contracts one. Like,
yeah,
how would that, would and these course providers might be really creative, so I don't want to
yeah.
put my foot on the, scale. Like maybe they know how to do that. Just thinking of is would they be able to come up with a way to do the contracts piece with the multiple choice?
Well, they probably have different options on the screen of the filling out something, and
Mm.
um, yeah, maybe that part might be too granular at this point. But the other things you suggested seem pretty achievable from a multiple choice exam. You know,
So would we make suggestions then, Steve? And beyond giving them the kind of points that we want, like we have here, adding to
yeah.
that, would we say, okay, these are the types of questions we want you to ask?
Yeah, so basically, I think what we're looking for here is, we have four draft, number four on this page drafted to say where it's going, but then what else can we add to give some direction? That's exactly what Jeremy just did.
Right.
So maybe look at what he said, or we can look at the language, maybe wordsmith it after this meeting or something, and make sure it reads in a way that yes, this could be achieved through their current testing environment, right? Um,
Mhm.
yeah, at least I mean, to me, that's the most clarity or direction I've been given ever on how we're gonna like formulate this. So that's good. I mean, I think that's what we're again, it has to fit in the confines of an exam.
Good job, Jeremy.
Well, yeah, but this is only the broker piece, which is easier. Like, because
I know.
yeah, the like with a principal broker, because what you'd really want to be testing them with the principal broker is their decision making and supervisory capabilities. So we're gonna have to think about how you would pull that out of an exam.
And then I keep going back to property management because that's kind of the height of our regulatory issues right now, and like we're not even giving them direction yet.
But at least on that one, I think you could base because you could say that the exam has to require them to uh, demonstrate the ability to do a reconciliation or something like that, right? Because then, so like I feel like the management one, I agree. Like, and I think the risk there particularly is that we don't have a lot of property managers here to provide input.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I can think of some more practical pieces that might be easier to test. Whereas the principal brokers, it's like
Yeah,
testing their ability to supervise and lead and do those things. That's might be challenging.
I see Stacy has her hand up, but just one thing on property management too. I could also look to my compliance manager and say, what are some of the things, like the essential elements when they get pulled in for a CTA review? I think we could probably, if you give us some good direction on the broker and principal broker concepts to include in number 4 or 4A or whatever, I bet we could create a sentence like that for property management. And Dawn Dorkson's not on the call today, but she's a property manager on our board. So I think we can, if you give us that direction, I think we can create a sentence for property managers. Does that make sense? Okay. Stacy, go ahead. We're gonna have to move this conversation along, but I think this is probably, is this a good next step, at least, do you think? Like, give us that direction. We've agreed on where it's gonna be housed. Is
My
that,
question, and
yeah, go
maybe
ahead,
I'm not
Stacy.
understanding where it's at right now, is that because under the advanced practices, so this is what you have to take after your first year in, right?
Mhm.
So it's saying that I just have to clock the hours. So if I clock the hours associated with these topics, so if I do 8 hours in business, I do 3 hours in review, there's nowhere in here says that I have to pass a proficiency exam after I take this course. So if I'm clocking the
Oh,
hours,
number
and
number
yes, you can
4. Stacy, go down to number 4. I don't want to cut you off, but it's there.
receive credit and then practical. So then, yeah, but what happens if I don't pass it? Then I just keep retaking it until
Keep
I
reading
pass it?
4.
In the
Maybe it's
red, in the
maybe it's not on
red.
your screen. It might not be showing on your screen. Pass a passing score of at least 75% on an assessment of license proficiency.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, it wasn't on my side. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm
great.
like,
Thank you.
eh.
Sometimes our screen monitors are different sized. Yeah.
Assessment means test.
Yes, I didn't have that
Yes.
part. I wasn't that far down on my screen.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Thanks. Yep.
My question is there any requirement on how many times you can retake it to get that 75%?
Michelle, how does that work now? There's no limitation. They just have to keep taking it.
Correct. There's no limitation. Yeah, it's at so the continuing education provider would then just continually, they'd have to have multiple exams to do that, but yeah.
And they couldn't honestly renew their license without passing. They have to self-certify they've done it, submit the results. Yeah.
Is there a way to limit how many times they can retake it before they need more education?
Currently, no.
Well, I
And
think it's
really, I mean,
gonna
if
be
they
the
keep taking it
education.
and they finally pass, that's kind of the point, right? Like they finally
Okay.
they finally got it. A
Yeah.
little slow, but they finally got it. Yeah. Um, Jeremy, do you want to maybe send us, like, think about that again with your language and send us that afterward?
Yeah, I'll send that one, and then
Yeah.
it sounds like we need to do one for the PBs too. And
Yeah.
I will try. I feel like I really am gonna need to reach out to some of the other folks on this call to help even maybe put together a first draft of that one if everyone's willing
Okay.
to participate. But if we could get something circulated on those two at least,
Oh,
get feedback,
yeah.
and then you know that I think we could.
And I mean, please include us in that email exchange. I mean, I don't care if we're all developing work product together. I mean, this should all be transparent anyway. So like, go ahead and whatever you feel comfortable sending us, let's just have that thread.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we want to, in tandem with all of this, reach out to a course provider that could help us as we're creating this and working on this, understand how they need the information to get it out there?
Well, Michelle, describe how that works. We don't generally ask for their feedback on what they're going to deliver. We usually prescribe to them what their goals are. Keep
Right.
that
I guess my point
firewall.
was ask them to let us know how they need it so that
Okay.
they can actually turn it out into a test.
Okay. What I'd like to do first is just get our goals here, like what are our learning objectives, and then get that drafted because we do have a public comment period. We'll send it to them. They have a chance to chime in. But I'd like for us to figure out what we're trying to do first. Does that
And
make
if I
sense?
can
Yeah.
I hop on here and just say that we do work with the instructors,
Mhm.
CE providers as far as like, making sure that they get what they need. So
Mhm. Yeah. we would make
they're not
sure that
shy of
one,
they're not shy in letting us know what they need.
no. Yeah, let's be honest, they're not. I mean, they're really good about letting us know if there's a challenge. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So was this conversation helpful? I know it's obviously a lot to talk about, but we knew this would be the biggest conversation, and it was. It's also probably the best part of the bill in some ways. Like, this is good stuff. Like, let's make this better. Yeah. Okay. So, we will also include you all on our thoughts about how we'll implement the property manager component of that. But I think I might want to see where you guys are going first. On your thoughts on that, and then we'll get our thoughts together. But yeah, please let's include it. Since we're driving this, we have to be included on all communication, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Michelle, do we want to go back to where we left off?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay. And then also, we left off with what did we?
I believe we left off at the end of Division 14. I think we completed Division
Yeah.
14. Or
Yeah.
sorry, fifth. I'm sorry. Let me look.
Page 40 something, I think it was.
I think we were just getting into the team
The team
stuff.
part, yeah.
I think we were just starting 15.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe
I
that's what it
agree,
was.
Mike.
I think you're right. I think we finished 14 and sorry.
Yeah, we left off at 015-145.
Chat.
Perfect. Sorry, don't look at the screen. It's going to make you see.
Yeah, I'm getting dizzy. Are you going? Okay.
There we are.
Okay.
There we are. Real estate teams.
Okay. We got through this, right?
We did.
Yeah,
So
we-
next is on to
we did that
disclosure.
one.
We are on the disclosure part, actually.
Yes.
We are down there, further down. There we will create what's needs to be in the form, so we're good on that.
So finish that up.
Principal and transaction, that doesn't really change, I don't think.
Nope. I'm
Nope.
still working on the language that was decided upon by the work group on Wednesday. I'm still going through here and inserting it.
About the authorized principal broker
Authorized, yeah,
Okay.
managing principal broker. Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, I have a just quick question on the timing.
Yeah.
So I think we said, did we say in there that the team disclosure needs to be at first contact? What was
contact? Yeah.
I just want to make sure that among the practitioners in the group that does that make sense for the team disclosure? I mean, we know it makes sense for the general agency disclosure, because that general agency disclosure is telling people about the options they have for representation generally. This team one is more involved. And so I'm wondering, like, does it make sense or does it make sense like prior to the signing of the buyer rep agreement or something like
That's a
that?
great
Can you give
point,
me
Jeremy,
some,
because
sorry, I
could be in
wasn't clear.
conjunction with, right?
The only concern I would have about leaving it too far down the road is I think the consumer needs to know right off the bat they're working with a team, not individuals. So I would rather have it at the first, one of the team members to, supply it at the first point of contact rather than waiting right before they do a buyer rep. But that's just my opinion.
From a management standpoint, it's like I can't watch that for first contact, but I could say, where is this addendum, right? When it comes to a buyer rep agreement. So just from a management standpoint, it does make more sense for me practically if it's in a company with a buyer rep agreement or a listing agreement, when they have an agreement versus first contact, because I can't watch that.
Except I know like when Our brokers do the agency pamphlet at first contact. We require the client to initial it and date it. And so, you could do the same with the other one as well.
I can see both sides.
I just think it's super important to not look at this as what it causes us. I think it's important to look at it how the public
That's the consumer.
consumer
Yeah,
thinks.
that's true. It is a consumer disclosure statement. So in a way, we're basically like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're inconvenienced. You're supposed to be disclose to the consumer what's going on.
And it does make sense to give it with that initial
Yeah.
agency template, which we know agents aren't necessarily good at. So maybe this would help, revive that so they take it more seriously. I wish that signing it, the initial pamphlet or initialing it would be a requirement because it's not.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely
I
becoming
suggest
more,
it, but there's no like signature space for that.
I think it's becoming definitely more easier since we are doing the buyer rep agreement right up front, right away when we meet the client. Like at least my brokers are having them sign agency, the pamphlet, and the buyer rep agreement all together. It's like one whole package right when they meet them. So
Yeah, that's a good observation. That used to be a pet peeve of mine too, is like there's no place to initial it, but at the same point, I think it's kind of become moot now with the new business practices.
mhm.
Yeah.
So going back to the initial question, what was the initial question, Jeremy?
Oh, and I don't have a preference. I was just wanted you
Mhm.
all to discuss to make sure that the at first contact, which is in the draft rule here, makes sense. And it sounds like overall
I
that
mean,
does make sense.
yeah, I feel like it makes sense because again, we're having them sign the buyer rep agreement up front, right when we meet them anyway. So it's kind of just here's one more document that you need to look over and read over and understand and sign.
Okay. Oh, Deborah, go ahead.
I agree with both Kelly and Rita. They make excellent points. As a managing broker, the only way we can supervise that requirement is in that first contact, somehow acknowledging it by the customer. Because the whole point of the law is to avoid concealment of your actual role in the transaction
Mhm.
and misrepresentation of who you are. For
Uh-huh.
example, a team representing themselves as a company or appearing to be a company
Mhm.
versus being an actual team within the structure of a company is very misleading to the consumer. So looking at it strictly from a consumer protection standpoint,
Mhm.
the earlier the disclosure, the better. The more complete the disclosure, the better. And giving managing principal brokers a tool to make sure that they're supervising this requirement by the law, I think
Yeah.
makes really good sense. And I agree with both Kelly and Rita.
So we'll keep it at first contact. Yeah, I mean, you don't get
Yeah,
your HIPAA
keep it at
statement to the
first
doctor on the way
contact.
out the door. You get the HIPAA statement at the
And
beginning of
then
the account.
you're gonna need for our lovely little brokers running around out there, you're gonna need to have a real clear definition of what first contact is.
That's defined already.
But it may be defined, but we might we need they just don't get it, and
That's
maybe
I feel like they never have.
maybe Kelly and Rita can shed some light on what do you guys do to make sure they get it. I know
yeah, that.
Stacy does an amazing job with our brokers making sure
Mm.
that they get it, but getting it and doing it sometimes are a
That's
conflict. So
that's for
but
you all
we
to that's
need to
for
The
you all to
work.
hard,
minister.
the hard part for me is all the digital stuff. And,
Right.
sometimes we have
Yeah.
people that never actually see the property. You do the video tour, or you're setting them up on a drip campaign. Is that first contact? Because you haven't even actually talked to them, but they requested some kind of report on your website. I like to have it in the email signature, which I know doesn't suffice, but at least there's proof of delivery. It's there. So when they get an email or something, it's just part of that. But yeah, it is a little confusing just because there's so many ways that can be considered contact. Um,
Okay.
so,
And you
you
can
know,
have it in your company policy. That's where we spell it out.
I'm going to move
It's
this
re-
along. For the purpose of this, we've determined it's going at first contact. So I'm going to
Right.
move this forward. That's your conversation to have. Okay. All right. Um, principal, yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, we noted this for a conversation. Michelle, do you want to chime in on this again?
Sure. So, part of professional real estate activity is defined in statute, allows principal brokers to close a transaction. I know it's kind of rare, but it does. With the new advent of the managing principal broker category term, we were wondering, should all principal brokers still have this ability to do closings of transactions, or should it be limited to managing principal brokers?
What
for
is closing?
authorized principal brokers, I don't want principal brokers going rogue. I want someone
What is
Is it
authorized.
something that can be allocated?
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree,
So
Kelly.
if authorized only, right, Kelly? Okay.
Rita, yeah, you had a question, Rita.
that's okay. Never mind.
This
I'm
happens so
sorry.
rarely. We really just wanted your feedback. We
Oh,
know it
okay.
almost never happens. So,
I'm like,
so
maybe I guess I'm not understanding closing a transaction. What does that even,
Yeah, I'm with Rita. I'm like, what?
what
I'm
does
gonna,
that entail? I'm sorry, I don't want to be like
No,
dumb
I'm with you, Rita.
yeah.
here.
I was like, when Michelle was reading
heard
this, I
that
was like,
before.
what?
I'm
Yeah.
not quite understanding.
Yeah. Would you
Oh,
explain
So
that in more detail?
it just shows you that it just almost never happens. This is
So
kind of
yeah,
okay.
it would be essentially the function that an escrow agent would take on.
oh, got it. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I've never done that. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So
I run into it with like manufactured homes type thing, which I know doesn't fall under you guys, but
yeah.
I don't like it. I'm like, let
Okay.
them do their thing. Yeah.
So we'll just say authorized principal broker and move on. Okay.
perfect.
And in the future, we'll think about just removing that from statute.
As even having an ability, right?
Yeah.
This one is just sticking to the word authorized everywhere, so keep moving on there.
Yep.
Um, we are going to have some questions coming up about disclose limited agent, right, Michelle?
I believe so.
Yeah, and we're going to ask for your feedback on this to make sure we are all in alignment. Are we in the right place here?
Can you scroll back up really quick? I just
Yeah,
that
there's go back
paragraph,
up. There's one more
that
paragraph.
larger paragraph that was edited. I
Yeah,
just want to read that real quick.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. This is where we want to talk about. Once we have teams and authorized principal brokers, tell us if we are in agreement here.
This brings up a broader point, which I don't want to get, it's almost philosophical, so I don't want to waste our bunch of time on it. But the question would be, even in a scenario where the managing principal broker has delegated authority to an authorized principal broker, would the managing principal broker, though, still remain as, so in this, like, for example, this says team member and the authorized principal broker, but should it be the authorized principal broker and the managing? Like, does the managing principal broker remain always a, a disclosed limited agent and ultimately responsible for everything, even if they've delegated some supervisory authority to an authorized principal broker.
I would say yes, right, Michelle?
That was a question I had. So
Yeah.
I don't know that it was actually.
So scenario that I'm thinking is I'm the managing principal broker. I'm buying a property. It's listed by another hybrid agent. I'm going to authorize another principal broker to supervise that agent because I don't want that's muddying the waters, right? And so
Right.
in that scenario, I wouldn't necessarily want to see that side of the transaction because that should be confidential to the seller.
Right.
That's the only scenario I can think of where the managing broker wouldn't want to be part of that chain.
Well, and are there other though? I mean, I know there are some models, some firms have a more distributed model of principal broker role. So like while um, you know, while the bill does require the naming of a managing principal broker, in practice, there are some firms I think that are less hierarchical that way, and that really do feel like when they delegate to a principal broker, they really are the one overseeing those transactions, and the level of involvement of the quote unquote managing principal broker is less. And so I know under the statute as we've changed it, that managing principal broker still is ultimately responsible for what happens at the firm, but are they involved enough to be a disclosed limited agent? And maybe they have to be. I don't know. I
Yeah, I think we might have defaulted that they, well, the principal broker currently would have to be.
Well, the managing principal broker has to be the disclosed limited agent? I
I'm
missed
trying to
something?
figure out if they also have to be the disclosed limited agent, even if they've delegated supervision and the review, and like you could have a firm that has a bunch of top level
Yeah,
principal brokers who like really do kind of
Sure.
in charge of a whole segment of the business, but there's still that one managing principal broker that's named with the agency, and we're filling out a disclosed limited agency agreement to both of those
Yeah.
BBs need to be named.
Well, I mean, that the managing principal broker is not a licensing type, so there's still a principal broker. Um, if they were not a disclosing agent, what would they be? Would they be the selling agent or a buyer's agent? I mean, there's only three options. There's agent to seller, agent to buyer, and disclose them an agent. If we say no to disclose them an agent, what are they?
Well, in theory, again, I don't know if that's what I'm glad we're talking about it. We're just talking out loud.
Yeah,
In theory,
yeah.
they're not an agent on that transaction because they've delegated the authority of managing that transaction to somebody else, to a different principal broker.
But who are they then? They're not involved at all?
They're running the firm,
Uh,
but they're,
but they're not reviewing the transaction. Is that what you're saying? Or they,
yeah, like they're not, because in some firms and small, there is a more hierarchy. It always goes to the top to review.
sure,
There are some where it is more divided, where
sure.
that person managing the firm isn't the one actually reviewing.
Yep,
Right?
exactly.
Now the question would be though, do they have, if that person has access to review, then they in theory should be a disclosed
I,
limited agent, right? And
I agree with that.
and they're ultimately responsible for what happens under them. They
yeah,
might have delegated away some of their authority, but
yeah,
they're still ultimately the one who's responsible.
yeah,
Thank you. We only have three relationships in Oregon.
right,
So
right.
should this
Oh,
say managing principal broker and authorized principal broker? Who
yeah.
supervises and controls the actions of members of the real, I mean, if you add them both in there, then it kind of covers what what we're talking about.
Yeah, we don't want to give the impression that the managing principal broker is a new licensing type and then they can just exempt themselves from
Mhm.
that because that does send the wrong meaning.
You're saying if you add it in this section, it sends the wrong meaning, or
No,
did I?
if we were to somehow say that managing principal brokers no longer a disclosed limited agent, number one, we haven't told them what they've become. They seller or buyer. That's all that's left. And how do we do that? Like,
Steve, I
yeah,
have a question. Before this new legislation came through, did the principal broker who registered an RBN, were they required to be a disclosed limited agent?
yeah.
So if the managing principal broker had that same requirement, it would be tracking. It would basically not be a change to current practice. Is that
Thank you.
correct?
That's what I'm trying to get at, right? Because the managing principal broker denotation isn't really relevant for agency relationships because there's still only the three, right? And I'm thinking out loud here, so don't take my thoughts as like definitive commissioner saying this is gospel, but rather I'm thinking out loud here. By introducing this denotation of a managing principal broker, we've done nothing to affect agency laws.
Right.
Got it.
Is that tracking with everybody?
I think that's right. I really want to hear what Deborah has to say
Yeah,
about.
Deborah, I want to call you on next. I want to get my thoughts out. Deborah, go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, the whole discussion we're having right now is very transaction specific. And a lot of your smaller companies, which don't have the volume of opportunity for assigning by a managing broker to somebody else to avoid the agency conflict of interest, we need to give real clear guidance on this. And my brain went from what the rule has to say versus what the training needs to be on this topic. And we, so, when we're putting together the training for this really has to be a huge focus on the content of that advanced practices. Because when I teach Principal Broker Academy for the Oregon Realtors, this is one of the most confusing things with the students, who most of are very good already managing principal brokers, but we really go into a quagmire on this very topic. It's not clear. So I think clarity on this when we write the rule is important, and then having the training that we put as the requirement match what the rules are going to say. Just my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. You're hitting the nail on the head. It's like we know this is creating confusion. But I think, Michael was very, Michael's comments, I think, really point out the fact that we haven't changed agency law. Like,
Well, can I ask a follow-up to that then? That would
yeah.
mean that in theory, if people had been doing this appropriately for the last number of years,
Mhm.
anytime they did a DLA agreement, they would have been naming multiple principal brokers as the DLA, yet I'm not used to seeing that. I'm used to seeing
No,
one named
no, that is
Okay.
definitely not happened.
Okay.
and which one is that? Like, so if I'm, and I'm thinking of like Premier, for example, like, so if I'm with a firm like that, who is being named as, is like Jeff Wyron being named on every one as the DLA? Or is the person who's delegated to be the supervisor been the one that's being named?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but and
Michelle, who disappeared from the screen. But remember with that training video a few years ago, was that contemplated? I can't remember that video we did.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that video was created, teams were not yet we're still talking about teams, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Teams
Yeah.
were, because designated agency when there's a team, adds another layer to that conversation. And that's where teams are missing it right now. I think that it's almost like team leaders need their own education requirement, that in order to be a team leader, you must also to be within a company, not another license. I'm not talking about another license, but in order for me as a managing principal, broker, company owner, in order for me to allow somebody in my company to be a team leader, they must have some kind of training, certification, because I can tell you some of these team leaders, my God, let's
Don't they,
help us
don't
as an
they have,
industry.
don't they have to have a principal broker license?
They do, but leading a team within a company, because what's happening in practicality, from what I'm seeing even nationally, is that teams are functioning like a company within a company.
Oh, it's happening right here in our little
Yeah,
town.
so they're misleading the consumer by two things initially, and that's by their advertising and by their name of their team. And I know we have regulation that monitors that, but still how they name their team and how they market to the consumer nationally and specifically in Oregon is definitely misleading, and if not borderline misrepresentation.
Well, aren't they taking the real estate out of and realty out of team names? Isn't that
Yes.
part of this? Okay, so that's
Yes.
gonna
Yeah.
help
But
tremendously.
they're very creative. They're finding ways around it, like associates, like John Brown and Associates. They're not.
Okay.
I think the fact that they don't have a requirement that team is in their name is part of the. Oh, Jeremy, we've had this
No,
conversation.
we
No,
talked
no,
about this on Wednesday.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I wasn't there, but
No, that's
no,
okay.
I wish you were there because we were struggling with this and your
Yeah, we
comments
totally
were
were.
helpful. So, yeah.
It should have been the team has to be in your name.
I would agree with that, because the misrepresentation to the consumer, Steve, which is our role here, is that they think they're dealing with a company and somebody, and it's not made real clear to the consumer.
We may have to refer back to that Wednesday conversation. We have two members that are feeling different than I think the outcome of Wednesday.
I wasn't here, sorry.
No, exactly. You, Rita and Deborah were not, and if I can maybe circle back to that for a moment then, because we had first drafted the language to say must include team or group, and then there's some concern about maybe not forcing that. So then I landed on, okay, we'll take out that requirement and refer back to the shall not part of the new bill that says you shall not include real estate or realty. And in our current draft from Wednesday, we've struck the must. Does that require a little bit of revisiting, and just, is this group going to now say, let's go back to saying you must have the word realty, I'm sorry, must have the word team review?
Well, I think just like Deborah said, people are getting creative. They're using associates, and it is misleading to the consumer,
Is it though?
isn't it?
Well,
I
of
don't
course
know.
it is.
No,
Oh,
I think it is, but that's just
I'm
my.
trying to remember
didn't
what
we
sparked
change
the
it May?
conversation.
Sorry, because that wasn't in the bill. It said you
the
can't
bill
use,
says you shall not use realty and real estate.
right, but it didn't say you must use
Must.
team or group. So that's why we landed on that May. But the other part of this is now that we're requiring that team disclosure,
Yeah, and if I
that
said, yeah,
should clarify that.
Stacy,
exactly.
what do you think? I see your hand up.
Well,
All right, sorry,
mine was going back to the original point, is that I get what Steve's point is that as a managing principal broker, you are responsible for everything that happens within your company, period. So if I have an authorized principal broker to supervise a team who is on the team, if something were to happen and the consumer said, hey, who do I contact to complain about this? It would have to go back to the original managing principal broker, right? So then say the team gets a complaint filed against them to the agency would then say, hey, managing principal broker, what's going on here, right? So then it would be my position as a managing principal broker to defend my position to say I had an authorized principal broker manage the team. But Jeremy, you brought up a good point. Then I don't know who you put on the disclosed limited agency. Then would it be the managing principal broker and then who you authorized principal broker to manage that team, right? So I think that's where the confusion is coming in.
Maybe both.
It seems like you'd have to have both in order to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If
to
the
be
theory is the
compliant.
managing principal broker is in charge of everything and has access to everything, then I think we have to people start putting both on.
Yeah, I agree with Jeremy on that one. I think both need to be on because both brokers have access to both files.
So I do need to kind of reconcile then the whole must versus may versus shall not know that from
Oh, yeah.
earlier, because like here
Steve,
today,
do you
I'm
want me to go
hearing,
back to that?
yeah, today I'm hearing using phrases like and associates is somehow misleading to a consumer. Does it matter if I say I'm Steve Strode and Associates working with Fisher Nicholson Realty? How's that different than saying I'm Steve Strode Real Estate Group working at Fisher Nicholson Realty? Does that really,
Right, there's no difference.
does it
Actually,
make
here.
more sense? I mean, does it make sense to say, um, here, are we going to land on every real estate team in the state is going to have to use the word team or group, and they shall not use the word realty or real estate? That's almost becomes unnecessary, doesn't it? I mean, if you're saying you must use team or group, but the other challenge is we have companies called real estate group, but that's actually the RVM. We have a group in town. It's something real estate group, and that's their RVM.
Steve, I was on a work group at Arello a few years ago on Teams when it was the hot topic.
Mhm.
And one state was looking at, and I don't recall which one it was right now, but that the team name was required to be the team leader's name, like the Joe Blow team, affiliated with XYZ Realty. And that was the only way they could get a team approved, was it had to be the team leader's name, John Brown real estate, well, it couldn't say real estate, the John Brown team affiliated with XYZ Realty. And I think they went forward with that legislatively, and I'll be at Arello next month. I'll follow up on that.
Referring back to the fact that we had a real estate advertising work group a few years ago, and they landed on the other language. So yeah, I want to be careful of that.
What?
But
Okay.
Michelle, you circled those 2 points on screen. You want to chime in before Michael?
Sure. So I just wanted to point out like Steve said, the agency initially came up with including the term team or group in advertising or for a real estate team, I should say. This is naming a real estate team. And then the group yesterday stated that maybe they wanted to do it may include the term team or group instead of requiring it. So that was just what I wanted to point out.
Yeah. And the issue came up because we've interpreted it practically to say if you're going to be in a team, you have to use the word team or group. That's how we've relayed that information to licensees when they call in. Our current language and rule says if you're a member of a team, you may use the word team or group. So we're trying to get away from that, what's perceived as permissive, but maybe we actually mean you have to use it if you're in a team. Is that right, Michelle?
So
If you're a team.
it's essentially if you're going to operate and advertise as a team, the only way to do that is to use the term team or group. It's kind of like the rule does say may, but it's kind of a backwards entry into saying you have to do it. And it's not very clear. So
Not clear. So, if, I mean, this, what's on the page now is how we first wanted to proceed. So we can go back to that. I kind of I did backpedal a little bit, of backtrack on Wednesday a little bit. But this was our initial guidance or recommendation was going to be, you must use the word team or group, and you shall not use the team's realty or real estate in good name. We can go back to that. Michael, go ahead first, and then Jeremy.
Well, I know when we talked about it the other day, you brought it up, there are a lot of companies that have group in it, or, that is there. So would that be more confusing if every team had group? Would they still wonder, are they a team or is that the company? I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, and that was just part of the discussion. So,
And then also, how much does that matter? I can think of a person in town here where I live, where she has her name and then real estate at the end. But I don't know if she's a team or she's an individual. She has assistants that do a lot of the work, but I don't know if she's a team or a group. But does it matter?
I think it
Because
definitely matters. I mean, we have the same situation here
Mhm,
with a woman who uses real estate in her name. So it's her first last name, real estate.
mhm.
And she does all her marketing, and the consumer thinks that she's actually her own company
Okay.
when she's not.
Well, what happens if I said Steve Strode Real Estate and I work at XYZ company? Because remember, they have to be clear that who they work with too.
Right, but the name can be this big,
Mhm.
Rita Kettler Real Estate, and then my company name can be like this big. And then if you send it into the agency and make a complaint, the agency just sends you back, okay, you just have to have these parameters. There's no like consequences to that kind of behavior. So then the consumer, if Rita Kettler Real Estate has all these Rita Kettler Real Estate signs everywhere, and everyone in town's thinking that I'm a real estate company,
Mhm.
when in reality, I'm not a real estate company. I'm Rita Kettler Real Estate with a team, and I have team members, and I work under another company. I mean,
Okay. Yeah. To your point though, I mean, we do get complaints like that. The first time out, it'll be an education letter, so you never see that publicly. And then if they keep repeating it, we will issue a reprimand on those. Um, but I think I'm leaning towards, sounds like this group is saying our original draft language might make sense, making it a must.
well, Jeremy and Deborah have.
Jeremy, go next. Thank you.
So I think one of the things we talked about the other day was whether you guys have authority to do that just because of the stat. But here is sort of how I think of it. Uh, you clearly have authority to say that a team name may not create confusion with consumer to believe that it's a company, right? And you also, I think, would have the authority to say something like, you know, by use of the name team or group, that is an indication that it's a team or group rather than a company, right? Like so you guys have a way of enforcing that. So all I would say is I have no strong opinions on whether we say may or must, but I think if you're going to say must, I would bring it into a broader statement that you're saying like that it cannot be deceptively similar, cannot be, sound like a company, be confused with a company name. And by using the word team or group, you are complying with this provision or whatever. Like, some way around that to sort of cabinet, and that's just a suggestion. But
Yeah. Uh, yeah, we're getting back to you, Jeremy, to comment about do we have the authority even to prescribe this so specifically? Um, I think there could be, I've seen other ways to describe a team that don't use the word team or group. I could be Steve Strode, home living experts, you know, part of Keller Williams Realty.
Yeah, we have the box.
It still conveys that
Yeah.
I'm part of a collection of individuals that work for that particular company. And by not using the word team or group, have they misled anybody? No.
Right. So
The
maybe
real key is
not
identifying
include.
you are a collection of individuals of licensees that work for that company. The way you describe this group of people working for that company, is that noun the most important thing here? Is that noun or the fact that this is your RBN?
Steve,
Yeah.
one thing that occurs to me is we kind of have another bite at the apple in terms of the actual disclosure itself.
Uh-huh.
I mean, in that, like, it could be, I haven't seen that, but it could be titled, real estate team disclosure or something. And then you could have a definition of real estate team in the form, and this disclosure is provided because these people are members of the team. Well, we can spell it out there. If you're handing them that,
Mhm.
I mean, that's after that first contact discussion, right? So relatively early in the process. So hopefully that would short circuit some of the confusion people might have.
That would help with the confusion there too. It doesn't affect the public advertising, but at least when they're working with them.
Right.
Deborah, go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. I don't want to get down in the weeds here, but Rita reminded me of something. And when we were talking about the marketing of teams, and that is the company name, our rules right now only say it must be obvious and apparent, correct?
Readily apparent or something like that, right?
Yeah, that I might be messing with the
Immediately
words,
apparent,
but
I forget the word too, yeah.
immediately and apparently, well, what does that, the question I get in Principal Broker, okay, well, what does that mean? And some states have gone so far as to define in their rules and regulations that the company name must be a certain size versus the team name, that and I know, Steve, you and I have had this discussion, do we really want to get that far down into the weeds as far as what the law regs say? But based on Rita's comment, that is where the misleading occurs the most, is the team name is half the ad and then the brokerage company is down in a little bitty corner. So, Rita, thank you for reminding us of that. But again, don't want to get down in the weeds now, but I think as we move forward with this whole teams thing, that's something we should keep in mind.
Yeah, so when we got together as a work group just a few years ago, and then there was an advertising work group that was convened. At that point, they determined, let's not get into font size regulation. It was the language we landed on. It gave it gave the agency ability to interpret what that means. And you know it when you see it. And so that was the direction of the work group just a couple of years ago, to
But
not get to
even in
that
2
granular
years,
level.
even in 2 years, the dynamics have changed because a lot has happened in that area. And a lot of states have gone to, giving a little more definition, maybe not font size, but proportion or something like that. Again, I'm not suggesting that, I'm just putting it
Yeah,
out there as we move forward.
yeah.
And
Appreciate that.
I agree with you on that. And I also want to say, yes, in the last 2 years, things have changed. Like, we're evolving so quickly as an industry. I think if we don't kind of keep up with the times, we're going to have situations like this. So 2 years really does seem like a lifetime. I mean, in terms of how much our industry has changed. So I feel like we need to keep that in mind.
Okay.
Thank you, Rita. I agree.
Yeah, right now we're using the standard of, if I look at the sign when the complaint comes in, can I read the company RBN at the same level I can read the individual name or the group name? That it seems to pass the test. There are certain times, like one of you mentioned, it's so microscopic that it's just obvious that they're trying to minimize it. And there's no benefit to that either, right? Like, why not just disclose? Okay, so thanks for letting us go back to that. I think we're gonna leave the team or group requirement in there for now. Is that what we're leaning towards? Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I'm here.
All right.
Sorry, leaving it as much as
The
I'm business as usual. Awesome.
the original draft we sent out was saying must include team or group. Are we sticking with that as a recommendation?
I'm still a May vote, but I'll go with whatever you say.
I'm still a nay on that too. I like the way we changed it, but
So you said May or nay? May?
nay. And again, I think if you had seen tons of complaints or any complaints for that matter, that'd be a different story.
Yeah.
And with the disclosure, we're addressing that. You know, we
So
also have to
May.
keep in mind, you know, agents have spent a ton of money and have been branding them like
Yeah.
it's not affect them unless it's necessary,
Right.
you know, but
Yeah. I mean, if the consumer has not been harmed, why would we change? Okay, so I'm sorry. So the may just may include. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
I would suggest, I know I got to move on.
just us. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
If we're gonna do that though, I would suggest that because right now you have to do like a bit of track, like so um even in the current rules, which we're actually removing some of the language from the current advertising rule on Teams, even with the current rule, you still just have this provision that says, you know, it has to comply with all other advertising rules. And then you got to go up to see, okay, it can't be misleading. And then you have to interpret that it not being misleading means that, you know, you can't use really big letters for your. So I think a direct statement in the Teams advertising piece that says you may use team or group and your advertising may not imply that the team is the company or something like something just direct. So people don't have to do any mazes to figure it out, and you don't have to get on font
Oh, you
size.
passed it, Michelle.
A little bit clearer.
Yes.
Yeah, Michelle, on your Teams page, you had that. You went past it. We had that separate division for teams that you created. There we go. Yeah. So the other elements Jeremy just mentioned, right? The not the misleading part, whatever. Um,
And I'm not saying that it's not identical. That's obviously true, but a separate statement that may not imply that the team is the company or run it, some, you know, some to that effect. Like,
yeah, bring that concept forward too, right?
I
Yeah.
think
Okay, good. Okay. So
So
we'll
number 3 would be the name of a real estate company may include teams and may not include the terms realty or real estate. Is that what we're heading? Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
and number letter B is actually as a result of the bill. So that was
Yes.
clarified in the bill. Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
exactly. Okay.
Well, I know that was another long conversation about this. It always tends to be, but we're up on time. So before this meeting, the two parts I knew would be the most in-depth today were going to be the part about the proficiency exam, and then this conversation about teams and groups. I knew we were going to get into the weeds in this the most, and we did. But it's also probably the biggest conversation to talk about. Michelle, were you going to say something?
I'm sorry. I just wanted clarification. So you wanted clarity on the fact that the real estate team cannot, I'm just going to say in plain terms, make it seem like they're the company. They have to make sure that. Do you want that in the real estate team's rule, or do you want it in the advertising rule?
I think it should be in the teams. I think the team section should be all together so people understand and there's no, like Jeremy had just mentioned, like, okay, I need to go here and look at, or could it be in both?
I was gonna say, because even some individual brokers use realty and real estate in their advertising. So they might not look at the team section to know that that's not one.
Oh, good
Could it
point.
be in both?
It can be in both, right?
Like the exact same verbiage? Jeremy?
I mean, I know Michelle and I are probably saying the same thing. It's like it's not the most efficient or elegant way to draft regulatory language, but it is more likely that it's understood. But you know, I don't know. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
this is more about a functional stuff here versus advertising.
Maybe you can put it in the general and then reference the team section as counts for teams as well or something like
Or
that.
like must comply with all other provisions of this division, right, Michelle?
Yeah.
In the team section, refer back to.
Yeah.
I think the trick we have is the name. The name is so connected to advertising that
Yeah.
In
Yeah, they're
fact,
so integrated, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
the
yeah.
whole purpose of a team is to help promote yourself as a group, right?
sure.
So maybe under somewhere else in this rule, comply with, yeah, not copy, but refer back to Michelle.
Okay.
Yeah. Refer to division, whatever that is, 15.
Which it looks like you already do here, so you just be the same thing and right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Number 4.
Advertising
Still
rule,
good.
you say also must comply with team
Yeah.
name regulations of, or
Oh, it's already there.
yes,
Down
you
number
can do it
four,
both
number
ways. The
4.
advertising, you want to say, and must also
Yeah.
comply with, just so that they know that the name regulation is over in the teams.
Well,
Yeah.
we are up against time again, and this is again that we covered the 2 most challenging parts of this whole process, I think, were what we covered today.
What were the
Michelle,
other points that we were supposed to cover today?
well, there's still 100 pages left.
Oh, okay then.
That being said, so much of it is um, more of this editing and wordsmithing stuff.
Sure.
I need direction from this group on like your appetite. We need your feedback. The part that required, I know, the most conversation is what happened today. Um, Michelle, are there other big chunks of this that really require us to talk? Or is there an email exchange we should do? I want to work with your comfort level and also respecting your time. You put in 3 hours this week.
I
We're up
apologize. I'm
against,
just going to go, I'm just going to briefly breeze
keep
through this.
scrolling. Yeah, that's
There
fine.
was a section like course requirements for timeshare that was hefty.
Timeshare, we don't have to talk about much because we haven't even written the exam for timeshare yet.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to ask you feedback on that right now anyway. We're going to pretty much run with that with the group I'm putting together for the timeshare license. I'm going to rely on them to give additional feedback there. This one, we tried to make it as simple as possible for you all because the old rule was just very cumbersome. To describe briefly here, almost everybody is electronic now. Most people don't use paper. Our whole process internally is online based. We get documents uploaded through e-license. We get complaints through e-license. So we would only ask for records on paper if the licensee themselves still operate that way.
Okay.
I'd never want to get paper if I don't have to. We don't even have a full-size copier in our office anymore, in our new office. So I know it says you must provide them in the manner and form as directed by the agency. I don't need to outline my business processes in rule. My business process is online. So basically, is this good enough? Is what I'm trying to get to.
I really like this red line. I've
Okay.
read it thoroughly. I like it.
Okay. I simplified it as much, or Michelle simplified it as much as possible.
Hey, Steve, on number 6,
Uh-huh.
I just looking for, is that it just if it's supplied to the agency you want the routing information or?
Yeah, good question. So in an investigation, sometimes the licensee will say, I sent that to them. I sent it on e-license. I'm sorry, I sent it on DocuSign. Well, there's an envelope that goes with that. You can just, okay, send us the envelope. It shows us the whole transaction history. Great. The complainant has no basis for their complaint. You did your job.
Yeah.
Usually this is to help the licensee when the complainant says they never sent that to me.
Got it.
Gotcha.
So this is really generally to help the licensee say, this is your proof that you did what you said you did. And it's always in DigiSign or or DocuSign or whatever product you're using. That's what we're referring to there. Again, this is actually help the licensee 99 times out of 100 versus penalizing the licensee.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing that, should we convene another short meeting to go through we can blaze through the rest of it?
I think that'd be good. And
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that'd be
Yeah,
good.
I'd be fine with it.
Okay, thank you. I want to be respectful of your time, but I need your help too, right? I want to feel like you participated. So, all right. What about, I'm going to look at my calendar quick too. So what about another Wednesday meeting on the 23rd?
At what
Wednes-
time?
Wednesday's the only day I can't do, but I mean,
Okay.
I
I
don't
know
know if
Wednesdays are usually office meetings for most of us managing brokers.
Okay.
Yeah,
9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, ours are Tuesdays.
I can do Thursday, Friday.
And I don't have the rest of the group here to ask their, we need to move our process along then too for meetings. I think that gives us enough time. Michelle, does that give
Yep.
you enough? If we did next Friday, are we still gonna be able to keep on track? Okay.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
What about Tuesday?
I
I'm
can't
fine
do
Tuesday.
I can do
I can do
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday at what time?
9 o'clock? How about you, Michelle? 9 o'clock
Um,
Tuesday?
I can't do morning.
I
Can
can't
you
either.
morning on Tuesday? Okay.
Can we do
How's,
Wednesday at like 10?
if you can't do morning,
I can do after 10. So 10 or after. I'm sorry.
On Tuesday.
I could do 10:30.
I
Same.
can too. Yeah.
Yep, that works
there's a
for
lot of
me.
nods. Okay. And then Michelle, if you're running late for some reason, I'll just start it out and you join in. How's that?
Sounds good. Yeah. I don't
Okay.
think I'll be, but definitely that's fine.
Okay.
So
10 o'clock Tuesday. We'll
the
send out the
22nd.
invite. And we'll try to make it as efficient as possible. This is mostly, I think, housekeeping now from here on in.
Mostly. Yeah.
Yeah.
when I'll send around, I'll send around after this meeting something in writing that we can start reacting to over email for the proficiency piece for
Great.
brokers and principal brokers, and then that's something we can discuss as well.
Okay. And you'll include the whole group on that, right?
Yeah, I'll just reply to
Okay.
the calendar appointment.
Yeah. We have because of the rulemaking work group, we've got board members on this group and non-board members, so I have to comply with public meetings laws and stuff like that. So okay. Yeah, good. All right. Tuesday, 10 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Okay.